Hello, this is Fiona Cuthbertson coming from the pod to record another episode of Off the Cuff. This week we're lucky enough to have Kirsty Blackman MP. Kirsty is the SNP MP for Aberdeen North and currently serves as the SNP Chief Whip. She's previously been the spokesperson for the Treasury as well as the Cabinet Office. Her priorities include the cost of living crisis, migration and ensuring that UK moves towards a low-carbon, environmentally sustainable economy. Welcome, Kirsty.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about your political journey?
I didn't really intend to become a politician. You might hear that quite a lot, but it wasn't on my game plan. I joined the SNP when I was 14 or 15 because whenever we went to any Scottish castles and things like that, my dad would talk about the Scottish history of it and the wars of independence and very strongly believed in Scottish independence. And I kind of figure if you're going to do something, you may as well do it properly. So he'd never joined the SNP, even though he always voted SNP. So I joined the party. When I joined the party, we didn't get anyone elected anywhere. So it wasn't a career choice at that point because that would have been a daft party to join if that was your plan. When I left school, I had two plans. I wanted to have kids and I wanted to help people. So I went to university to do medicine and it was a complete and total disaster. First year medicine in Aberdeen at that point was a very traditional course. You did not meet a living person during the course of that first year. And I thought, I can't do 5 years of this. I had really bad mental health through that year. I was struggling with depression. I was struggling to be able to do what I was supposed to do. So I stepped out of it and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with myself. I'd been more and more involved in the SNP, and in 2007 there was a big change in local government reorganisation and a lot of councillors took a golden handshake to step away, and I was asked if I would stand for council that year. I did get elected for council in 2007, the second youngest councillor in Scotland that year. My little brother was the youngest one. Started doing the casework and trying to make a difference to people's lives, and I just thought, this is amazing, I love doing this. I had both my children while I was a counsellor. It was good because it was flexible and I could continue to help people and also look after the kids and be the main carer for them. And then 2014 happened. We had the independence referendum and I got up the next day and said, right, I'm done with politics. And then I got up the day after and said, no, hold on. If we're stuck with Westminster, then I'm going to go down there and sort them out. So like in 2007, when I was incredibly lucky because the SNP won a bit of a landslide compared to previously, 2015 again, we won a bit of a landslide, a massive landslide with 56 out of 59 MPs. So that takes me up to becoming an MP in 2015. As you said, I've done various roles over my time in Parliament. Probably enjoy the Chief Whip one the most. Having a much better idea of what's going on in Parliament. I'm also wearing multiple hats just now. So I'm also the DWP spokesperson and the Women in Equality spokesperson. So it's quite busy at the moment.
That is quite a set of challenges and quite a set of responsibilities you have there. So what do you think is a common myth about being a politician?
I think sometimes people expect that politicians, whether they agree with them or disagree with them, are immensely selfish. Even people that I really disagree with politically, with the exception of a handful of individuals. Almost everybody got into this job to try and make people's lives better. They just disagree about what better looks like and how to go about that. The level of dedication that I see from people who are in my party and out with my party is totally not what most of the public expects and thinks about politicians. And the other thing is that sometimes people are scared to meet me, which I think is quite hilarious because I'm like 5'0". I am not a scary person at all. They just don't realise that we're all human beings and go home and wash the dishes same as everybody else. Well, I try and avoid washing the dishes if I can, but just the same as other people. Just happens that we've got the kind of privilege of being able to represent people and to find our lives helping people. It's great.
You mentioned the fact that most people become MPs to improve people's lives. So what work have you undertaken that you feel makes you a change maker in that world?
Certainly my focus is on my constituency, is on the people whose lives I help in Aberdeen who come into my office and ask for assistance. There was a guy that came into our office. He was really struggling because his visa status didn't allow him to work, and the Home Office were really dragging their feet on trying to decide whether or not to approve this visa. Earlier this year he was given leave to remain, so he's now allowed to remain in Scotland. He's allowed to live in one of our communities in Aberdeen. He's got a job which he had lined up, but he was just waiting for the visa status to come through. And that makes such a difference to him, to his wife, to his kids. It makes such a difference to that family. And that's one story. There are so many stories like that. Generally, in my office in Aberdeen, I have a team there, and aim when we're employing people, are they dedicated to helping people? Do they want to make a difference? So politics is almost secondary. They need to have some sort of alignment with my politics. It can't be totally the opposite. But if they're dedicated to helping people, then that's the key thing for me. Those things that we do in the background that doesn't make a difference to everyone's lives, makes a difference to one family, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
People see politics as very competitive, but working cross-party in politics is often key to getting change. So what would you say is the best example of this happening?
So just to agree with you on the combative thing, I tend to avoid PMQs if I can. I don't think it shows Parliament in a good light. It's testosterone, adrenaline-fueled anger. Nothing gets achieved at PMQs. Well, very occasionally it does. Somebody asks about a really difficult constituency case and asks Prime Minister for help. But in the main, I don't feel like it's a good use of my time. I don't feel like it's a good reflection of actually what Parliament is about. In terms of some of the cross-party stuff, I've been involved recently in trying to create a women's caucus in Parliament. The whole idea of a women's caucus would be that all female MPs would be members of the women's caucus, would be able to meet together, would be able to work together on a cross-party basis. I think it's really important to have something like that, not least because just now I'm the only female SNP representative, and actually being able to have that arena where we can talk about things and bring a different focus, I think, would be really helpful. There is so much cross-party work goes on in Parliament, and you just don't see that most of the time. As Chief Whip, I spend a huge proportion of my time liaising with people from other parties. One of the big roles that I'm doing just now is as a member of the Speakers' Conference. The Speakers' Conference has been pulled together to look at safety issues for MPs and candidates. One of the big concerns that I've had, difficult to say to young women, particularly right now, stand for Parliament. It's a great job because of how toxic the abuse is, because of how many safety issues and concerns that there are. So anything that I can do in that cross-party forum to try to ensure that we are kept safer, to try to ensure that democracy and representation is available for everyone, that's true cross-party work.
Obviously, there are the safety issues around being an MP at the moment. Is that the hardest challenge you've had to overcome, or are there any others that have been particularly difficult?
I think the hardest thing that I experience on a very regular basis is being so far from home. I'm in London 4 days a week, 40 weeks a year, and I live in Aberdeen. I'm from Aberdeen. It's my city. I love my city. I don't just say that because I'm an MP. I've got a bit of an obsession with Aberdeen. It is my favourite place in the entire world. There was a while that we lived 30 miles outside Aberdeen, and that was 30 miles too far away for me. And so being so far away from my home, from my family, from my constituents is really difficult. One of the positives since COVID is that a huge number of people that live in Aberdeen are now much more au fait with being able to talk to one another online. So if they need a meeting with me, I can do constituent meetings from London in a way that I never could before. But I would say for me that the safety concerns absolutely do worry me. I think about that a lot, probably far more often than is health. But being so far away from home, being in a big city that is not my city, is the most difficult thing, I would say.
Have there been any times where you've had to grow and develop because of a situation that's not gone according to plan?
God, all the time. Like every day that happens. During the course of COVID, I really struggled as, being really open about kind of mental health challenges that I've had. I think everybody struggled during COVID. I basically put a lot of responsibility on myself for trying to keep the kids engaged in schoolwork and things. And also, I was responsible for the 25 group staff who were working in London at the time, who were also going through their own struggles with working from home and maybe in a shared property that they were trying to find space to put a laptop down, if they even had a laptop. So I felt like there was all just too much there and ended up stepping down as deputy leader, which made a huge difference. I think there's been a few times when various things have happened in the House of Commons that I've really struggled with decisions that have been taken. The decision about bombs in Syria that was taken a number of years ago, I found very, very hard to cope with. I did not like the way that some people put it across in the chamber. I didn't like the way that they acted over it. I had to get past that. You still got to work with people. no matter whether you disagree with their views on a certain thing, you've still got to work with them on a cross-party basis on other things that you might agree with. And then we had an issue in Parliament when the Speaker chose amendment in relation to an Opposition Day debate, and it meant that the SNP's Opposition Day motion on our own Opposition Day was not given a vote. And that was really frustrating. One of the things that you kind of feel difficult is calming that rage down. It's okay to be angry about stuff, but you can't swear at people. You can't shout at people. That's not the way that you need to approach things. You've got to find ways in order to get through your anger and channel it into positive things, or at least appropriate ways to deal with it. And you can't really show that human emotion of anger in the normal way that other people would when they were feeling so frustrated. And I'm not generally an angry person, but when some of those things that are really extreme happen, there's been a huge amount of learning. I'm learning every single day.
And of course, if you are angry or you do say something out of place, it's likely to be put on social media and never forget it.
Yeah, and fair, actually. We're in a position of responsibility, got a huge amount of power, whether we want or sought that power or not. Almost everybody that we interact with, unless they're other MPs, unless they're the Speaker or peers, then we're probably got a level of authority over them, and you have to be really responsible with how you use that. So I think it would be fair to put that on social media, because we've got a responsibility to behave in adult and appropriate ways and to not take our frustrations out on other people.
So what is the insult that you're most proud of?
The insult that I'm most proud of? So it wasn't an insult towards a person, because I don't tend towards that kind of thing. I did call the House of Commons standing orders mince. Hansard wrote to me afterwards and said, "What was that word that you said?" And I said, mince. The House of Commons standing orders are mince. The standing orders are the rules by which we behave in Parliament. Some of them were written an awful long time ago, 400 years ago. One of the rules, for example, is the House shall never be counted, which doesn't make any sense unless you know all of the backstory. It's not a sensible rule. I do still think the standing orders of the House of Commons are mince. I think we should take the book and burn it and start again, because they've been added to over the years, because some of them have been taken out and other ones haven't. So I did quite like being able to get that word on the record.
What is the best compliment that you've ever received?
Going back to that casework thing, when you get an email from somebody saying that we've made a difference, very occasionally you get one that says, "You've changed my life." And that is an absolutely amazing feeling. I got one years ago that I speak to my team about. Generally, when we take on new staff members, I always mention this one. It was a lady that lived in a community in my constituency, and she lived in a pretty dark little road. And she's saying that the street light outside her house was broken. She'd reported it to council. Council hadn't done anything about it. And I got in touch with the council and got the council to come and fix this street light. And she said to me that she hadn't been able to leave the house. She'd been so nervous about falling over because she was unsteady on her feet that she hadn't been able to leave the house because she was too scared without the street light being there. And that had literally changed her life by allowing her to be able to leave the house when it was dark because she could see properly.
You are, as you say, currently Chief Whip of the SNPs. What underrated tools are indispensable for this job?
Oh, for Chief Whip, a good mum stare, a good hard mum stare. Sit someone down and you say, like, "I really need you to be there on Tuesday." And you just sort of look at them until eventually they say, okay, I'll cancel my event and be there. And it's important that you can get people to do these things. You can convince them the level of importance of something. One of the things that I do is I don't put on a lot of three-line whips. So the way the whipping system works is that you put a three-line whip on if something is vital. Basically, if there is a three-line whip next Tuesday for the entirety of the day, that means I expect you to be there unless you're in hospital. Two-line whip is, this is important, you need to ask permission. And then a one-line whip or no whip applied means you don't have to be here. I don't need you to take part in that business. You can if you want, but I've got no requirement on you to do that. So my team know that if there's a three-line whip, it is for a very good reason, and I absolutely require you to be there. But that hard mum or hard Paddington stare is super underrated and quite often gets the outcome that I'm looking for.
You mentioned earlier on about the fact that the Chief Whip is right at the centre of the party. Does that mean that you get to know everybody else's secrets?
In theory, yeah. Unfortunately, my guys don't have very much in the way of scandalous secrets. I'm quite sad about this. I was expecting, not expecting, but I was hoping that I would learn all of this kind of There was a book that was published by a former chief whip, and he came up with all these secrets and things that people had said, and I was like, oh, I'm going to learn all of this stuff. No, my guys are immensely boring. I mean, they're lovely, and dedicated constituency MPs, but unfortunately there's not a huge amount of scandal. One of the interesting things that you do learn as chief whip is much more about the workings of this place. So much more about actually what's going to happen, when's it going to happen, what order is it going to happen in, how do amendments get selected, and then thinking about whose name should be on the amendment to try and ensure that it gets selected. So that kind of internal working things has been really interesting, but a significant lack of scandal, sadly. No, I suppose that's a good thing that I don't have MPs who are involved in scandalous situations.
Absolutely. With devolution, you have to work across parliaments. Is it easy to ensure that both Holyrood and Westminster work together and share common goals?
I would say that it's not something that we've always found easy. So the SNP, since I've been an MP for the past 10 years, we've been in government in Holyrood. Sometimes the comms have not been as good as they could be. Sometimes they've been truly excellent. It's something you've always got to work on. Because if you get a change in personnel, for example, and that person was key to ensuring that the communication happened properly, then it could all break down just because one person is no longer in the role that they were in previously. So it's a ever-changing and ever-evolving situation. I would say that, or much of the time, we've been in a pretty good place with regards to that. We tend to work together really pretty well. So I've got a good relationship with Shirley Ann Somerville and her team, who lead on welfare issues, social security related issues in Scotland, just so that we can make sure that we are lined up, that actually if they've got concerns about something coming down the track, I'm able to raise those concerns with the UK government ministers.
It's just over a year until the elections in Scotland. Who do you think is going to win?
I don't know. Politics is so bizarre right now. None of us, I think, would be looking into crystal balls and saying that the future is absolutely clear. The SNP is doing as good a job as it possibly can with the ever continuing austerity that we're seeing coming from Westminster, and it hasn't let up as a result of Labour coming in. I think things like the Scottish Child Payment, things like the baby box, free prescriptions and free university, it is better to live in Scotland because you get lots and lots of positive things that help make people's lives better. So I would like to see an SNP government. I would like to see John Swinney continuing as First Minister. He is the right man for the job right now, particularly given the cost of living crisis that continues.
You would expect, considering the Labour Party's majority, that they were secure in their position, but they're facing a number of potential rebellions, obviously from their backbenchers. Do you think the Prime Minister will do a U-turn to prevent them happening, or is it a storm in a teacup that they can just manage?
This is not a storm in a teacup. This is a really significant issue. Even if it does end up that the Universal Credit and PIP bill gets through, even if it does end up that Labour MPs back down from the amendment that they've put in on this, you cannot understate how hard it is to see a majority like this to pretty much disappear overnight. So it's unprecedented, I think, that this large a majority could be under threat because of the decisions that are being taken. So whatever the outcome, and I desperately hope that we don't see this bill go ahead, because it is so badly thought through. Disabled people are terrified, and it is purely about reducing the bill. It is purely about taking money away from disabled people. It is not about making people's lives better, which you would have expected a Labour government to do. Whatever the outcome is, Labour and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves as well will be massively damaged reputationally. Their position in the parties will be massively damaged by this situation that they've created.
You mentioned the fact that the government are just trying to reduce the benefits bill as opposed to actually help people. So what do you want to achieve during this parliamentary session to change that?
It's really difficult right now because I kind of feel like I've spent most of this Parliament firefighting things that Labour have put in that I never would have expected Labour to put in. So I've almost had to set aside some of the plans and aims and thoughts that I had on how best to make people's lives better, because I'm just trying to make sure that the government has stopped making people's lives worse. I would like to see a full return of winter fuel payments. I would like to see the two-child benefit cap cancelled. I would like to see the benefit cap got rid of. I'm glad they have put the task force in place, but it doesn't feel like their focus is actually on reducing child poverty. If we can do anything, surely a reduction in child poverty should be the top thing that we're looking at. States should be stepping in to ensure that kids are fed and kept warm. I would like to see the government focusing on this, and I'll do everything I can to ensure the UK government does make a positive difference rather than trying to cut money that people are getting instead.
What practical solutions would you instigate in order to make sure that those on the coalface can actually really make that change happen?
Big structural things around the DWP. So things like the way that universal credit works now, the 2-child cap that's in place, the benefit cap that's in place, which basically means that, no matter what level of conditions you have, no matter what disabilities you have, no matter how many children you have, there is a cap on the total amount that you can get. Never fair when it was put in place. In Scotland, we've also got a thing called the Scottish Child Payment, and the Scottish Child Payment is paid to families to ensure that they've got additional money, recognising the additional cost of having children. I've got 2 kids. I know how much kids cost. It is not insignificant. And we would like to see the universal credit child element uplifted in order to ensure that families are given an equivalent amount to what we're paying in the Scottish Child Payment just now, families across the UK. So I think that would be really helpful.
Parliamentary procedure can be quite slow, so if you could change one thing about parliamentary procedure on the basis it would speed up decisions and change their lives, what would it be?
I think it's quite difficult to pick one thing because there is so much about the standing orders, for example, that are not right. That's why I described them as mince, because I think they're unrescuable. But if I was only allowed to pick one thing, it would be a form of how Parliament votes on things, whether we would put in place electronic voting, which would be certainly preferable. We did, during the course of COVID, have the ability to vote away from the estate as well, so you could vote when you were not in Parliament. I can see fors and against of that, but it would certainly allow me to represent my constituents better if I could spend more time in my constituency rather than being away from home quite so much. The other thing about votes is that you never know when they're going to be. Sometimes you can make a pretty good guesstimate about what time the votes are going to be, but if we've got to arrange our entire day around the possibility of votes, then we can't have the meetings that we need to have. We can't sit down at our desk and reply to emails because we don't know whether there's going to be a vote in half an hour or whether it's going to be in 4 hours' time. So I think more certainty around timing, as well as votes not taking 12 minutes per vote, would make a positive difference to the kind of flow of the day and the ability of MPs to represent their constituents.
And finally, do you feel positive or negative about the future?
That's a really difficult question. There's been times in the past that I've felt overwhelmingly negative. So when Brexit happened, for example, as I said, around the Scottish independence referendum, the day after that, I felt like there was just no hope for the future. Just now, I'm finding it very difficult to offer my constituents, to offer people coming in my door, any level of optimism about things. I generally am not a hugely pessimistic person, but given the direction of travel of this Labour government, given the fact that they're making cuts to disabled people, for example, I'm struggling to see a way that I can say to people, your life is going to be better, don't worry, don't panic, it's all going to be okay. But there's always hope. One of the brilliant benefits of my job is that I spend a lot of time meeting people who are dedicated to making a difference. And, even in the face of structural difficulties with the social security system or issues with the immigration system and the hostile environment that there are people out there who are spending their time ensuring that people are fed, ensuring that people are loved, ensuring that they're cared for. And you can't look at that and not think there is hope for the future, because people want community, they want to make a difference. And so that allows me a glimmer of hope, I think.
I'm glad to hear you have a glimmer of hope at least. Well, Kirsty, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. It's been most interesting to hear about your journey in politics and hear a bit about behind the scenes of the SNP. Thank you to the listeners who've hopefully enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed making it. If you have any questions regarding the podcast today, please feel free to comment. If you think it's worth coming back, please like and subscribe. If you feel you need something to tide you over to the next podcast, please buy my book Party Games on Amazon. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Hope you have a good week, one and all.